Sometimes, proclaiming the truth can't be done safely in the daylight, so it must be done in the shadows. The stealthy approach must be taken. Clandestine means of ministering to God's faithful must be used. The Catholic Church has had its own share of 007s, albeit with considerably less shaken not stirred martinis. Here are Secret Agent Saints. The Masters of Disguise, Miguel Pro and Joseph Vaz. Miguel Pro was born in 1891 in Guadalupe de Zacates, Mexico. He joined the Jesuits at 20. Miguel eventually had to flee due to revolution. He made it to Belgium, where he was ordained in 1925. Not too long after his return home, more trouble began. The government decided it wanted to reduce the influence of the church in public life, thus began the enforcement of laws that restricted religious freedom, like preventing public worship and a ban on clerical attire. Eventually, protests turned into armed conflict that became known as the Cristero War. That meant Miguel had to keep a low profile in order to continue to look after the spiritual and material needs of the people. To minister to those in prison, he might don a police officer's uniform. Or he would go around dressed as a street sweeper or a wealthy businessman, as seen in these photos. And as this photo shows, he was eventually caught and executed in 1927. In the late 1600s, Sri Lanka was under control of the Dutch, which meant it was a Calvinist stronghold. The Catholic communities on the island didn't see any priests there for over 10 years. Enter Joseph Vaz. He was born in the Goa region of India to the devout Konkani Brahmin caste. With a keen intellect and solid education, he proved to be a popular preacher and confessor. In 1684, he joined the Oratorians, and 2 years later, he was given permission to go and minister to the people of Sri Lanka. Going into and working in an area that persecuted Catholics meant he needed a disguise to do so for as long as possible. The concealments of choice? Day laborers and Indian sadhus, wandering ascetic men and women of Hinduism and Jainism. He was successful in his activities, even if they were very physically demanding, because he had to walk from place to place. His canonization and beatification ceremonies both took place in Colombo, Sri Lanka, by Popes Francis and John Paul II, respectively. Speaking of whom, the culture warrior, John Paul II. You can fight a hostile occupying force with guns and explosives, but a less violent way appealed to a young pious manual laborer living in Nazi-occupied Poland. John Paul II joined the underground resistance to fight the Nazis. Preservation of Polish culture and identity was the priority. As an actor, the future pope would perform plays that would get him, and everyone who put on the production, killed if they got caught. And speaking of World War II-era Catholics going up against invaders, the sneaky catechist, Blessed Peter Torot. When Japanese forces initially took over Papua New Guinea, they rounded up all priests and missionaries, but otherwise left the Christians free to do as they please. One such saintly Christian was Peter Torot, the son of a local chief, a popular and successful catechist, and a model husband and father. His zeal for the faith didn't fade away, despite the heavy cross of having to minister to, well, pretty much everyone nearby. Later, the Japanese came down hard on religion. They banned religious practices and destroyed churches. Peter boldly and stealthily continued. This included building a church deep in the forest, secretly holding prayer sessions and hiding sacred vessels in caves, and delivering communion to the sick and the dying under the cover of night. Peter, in 1945, would receive a martyr's death by lethal injection after unflinchingly defending the holy sacrament of matrimony. Part 2 of Secret Agent Saints will be ready soon. In the meantime, what other stories of Secret Agent Saints do you know? Comment below.